Tennessee on the road at Oklahoma, the 6:30 p.m. kick on ABC. College Game Day will be there. We agree. This is the game that I think everybody should have their eyes glued to. The Volunteers, when I snagged this line for a run sheet, 7.5-point favorites on the road. I mentioned in the outset, this is the first SEC game for Oklahoma. Josh Heupel's returning to his familiar stomping grounds, a place that once called him brother, where he won a national championship as a quarterback in 2000. He was also fired from Oklahoma as the offensive coordinator almost 10 years ago to the day. The storylines here, Garrett, are rich. They're deep. But under all of it, I think you have one team coming in that feels very composed, very put together, very much on an on-ramp towards title contention of both the conference and maybe the national variety. And on the other hand, you have a home team that has a really good defense, but boy, they are struggling to put together some offense right now. Talk to me about where you're leaning in this game as we kick it off, and we'll break it down from there.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna take Tennessee in this one personally. Tennessee, and I'd take them minus the 7.5. This might be something towards the end of the segment, but I think Tennessee is probably one of the best teams in the country. And I don't feel particularly like that's a hot take. I know it's the keeper of the hot takes over here, but I don't think that's that hot of a take. Look, early on, I know it's early. Like we just said, the stats don't necessarily matter that much right now because you'd have a couple of things that bust. But look, Tennessee's number one in points per game. They've scored 63.7 a game, and then they're third in opponent points per game at 4.3 per game. That seems like an unfair, unrealistic statistic, but that is where the numbers stand right now. And I don't think that's that much of a coincidence. Yes, I just mentioned like they beat up Kent State, and it's, whatever. That's fine. Congratulations. But I think the thing about that is, Tennessee for a couple of years now has kind of just been like the air it out team and, featuring some running and, obviously some stuff was working a couple of years ago and, they have some, talented receivers, a good quarterback, and then steps down a little bit. And now you got Nico in here and everyone's, focused on Nico and him being the guy, right? He's the savior. He's the guy who's turned the program around. And all I think that he's done is he's made other teams have to respect the pass a little bit. Because he's crazy talented, but it's not like the numbers he's putting up are gaudy necessarily. I'm looking at his stats right now on the season. Through 3 games, he's got a 71% completion rating. That's amazing. He's got 698 yards. He's averaging just 232 per game, which isn't necessarily setting the world on fire or anything. But the big thing is he's not really doing too much in the turnover department. He's not really throwing that many picks. He's thrown a couple, but not that many. And the big story for me is they're running the ball at an insane clip right now. Everybody on that team is committing to running the football, doing a really good job in the run game. I love what it is. And that's kind of the big matchup that I want to look at is the run game versus Oklahoma's kind of, stifling at times. They've definitely held some people down on the defensive side. They boast the linebackers. They got some good talent on that side of the ball. I just think that the Tennessee run game is a nasty 1-2 punch with Dylan Sampson and Deshaun Bishop. And so it just, for me, this is the better team, Tennessee. All the storylines are going to be awesome. It's going to be an awesome crowd in Norman. That's going to be just an awesome environment to see. And I think they're going to be rocking. But I think pretty quickly, Tennessee is going to take the air out of the place. And for a little while this year, I think Tennessee is going to be able to name their score. And I think that starts against Oklahoma and Norman. I think they're going to be able to score whatever they want to, as much as they want to, because this is a really, really good, very talented offense. But it does base itself on the run. And when you base yourself on the run, that travels, right? That's the thing we talk about. Running and defense travels. And by the way, and we didn't touch on it too much, but that defense is pretty nasty too. They play some nasty football on that defense. They hit guys hard. They've been doing a lot better stepping up. And so I'm really impressed with Tennessee. I think this is one of the top teams in the conference. And this isn't me fading Oklahoma. This is just me praising Tennessee for what they are and recognize them as one of the better teams in the conference, one of the better teams in the country right now.
Yeah, Tennessee is on fire, no doubt. I'll defend Nico's stats just a little bit. He's only played 2 complete games, right? He played the first half of the opener, the first half of the third game against Kent State, obviously the full game or most of the full game against NC State. So hadn't had to put up gaudy numbers in order for
Right.
them to win.
And just to be clear, that was the point. I wasn't saying that he wasn't good. I'm saying it's not like Tennessee's scoring a bunch now just because Nico's going off. Like they're
Right.
doing this as a
Very,
whole team.
yeah, very
Yeah.
complete team. It's interesting on the other side, you look at Oklahoma and their defense is stout. I like what they have there. They've kept their opponents to low point totals overall, but I keep coming back to the struggle of the offense. And it's the
Mhm.
offensive line. That storyline has been beaten to death, 6 ways to Saturday. Jackson Arnold, I think, is a fine quarterback, but he's young. He's going to make some mistakes. And behind an offensive line that doesn't give him time to look down the field and complete those big chunk plays, I do worry about their ability to keep up with Tennessee. Tennessee is a 7.5 point favorite for a reason. And in fact, this is the first time that Oklahoma has been more than a touchdown home dog since 1998 against Texas Tech, per
Wow.
ESPN stats and info. You look at what Oklahoma has really struggled to do, and Jackson Arnold, when the chips are down, he's using his legs more than he is his arm. Oklahoma is one of the worst teams in the country through 3 weeks on plays, explosive plays, more than 20 yards down the field. Now, their opponents, nobody too stout defensively, right? They played Temple, they played Houston, and then Tulane, which was easily their best competition that they faced so far. The first 2 weeks against Temple and Houston, Oklahoma was dreadful on third down. So
Mhm.
it's an offense that's failed to find some rhythm. And unfortunately, because they haven't dominated anybody of an inferior caliber so far, it's really hard to see a Goliath walk into Norman and say, yeah, I think Oklahoma is going to be able to keep track in a potential shootout. I think the Sooners defense will hold Tennessee back from what they've been putting up, even more than what NC State allowed. But I think late, as that game progresses, as Tennessee's run game continues, like, waves on a rock, just to beat down the doors, that's where I see Tennessee pulling away. I think the Volunteers can win this by 14-17 relatively easily.
I, I think you're probably right about that, but I'm willing to go a little bit further than that. I don't think this will be particularly close. And I want to give Oklahoma some credit. They have been winning games where not a lot's been going right, right? And that's hard to
That's
do
very true.
when you have, hey, the pass game isn't working, the offensive line isn't working, we're finding ways to win. That's, to their credit, right? They have to be able to get praise for that a little bit. But the problem is you do reach a different caliber of talent, a different caliber of athlete. And like this is just a better coached, better overall system right now at Tennessee than what Oklahoma has in place. And what Heupel's been able to do at Tennessee, I think is one of the more underrated stories in college football right now, just because Tennessee hasn't really broken through at that national level yet, right? They've looked pretty good. Obviously, season derailed by injuries a couple years ago, but end of the day, I think Tennessee and what they're doing and what they're building is kind of a massive storyline. And so I think, and I said it earlier, I think Tennessee's going to kind of be able to name their score. I think they're going to do what they want to. And I don't think it happens early, right? I don't think that this is a case where early on, they're just going to go out there and go 21-0, right? They're not going to go out there and just straight up, punch them in the mouth a couple times, hit them with the 1-2-3, right? But I could see this being a thing where, halfway through the second quarter, we're talking about time of possession. We're talking about how Tennessee's had the ball the whole time, and the OU defense is getting real tired, and they come back out from the half and may make a couple of mistakes, and OU starts to press on offense, they turn the ball over, and then this whole thing just spirals, right? I could see that being the case in this game, and I really do think Tennessee is going to win this game by a whole bunch. I don't think that this is going to be a particularly fun game towards the end, because I think it's going to be one we can all just kind of say, well, Tennessee did their thing. I guess we can check back in with them later. What was the final score? How much did they end up beating them by? Oh, 30? Okay. And I think that's going to be how this goes, because unfortunately, like you said, like they just, Oklahoma doesn't have much on the offensive line. Tennessee plays pretty good defense. Oklahoma hasn't really been able to dominate those lesser teams. And so even though they found ways to win against those lesser teams, it's going to be really hard to find a way to win against Tennessee. And I don't just mean win the game, but also just win individual possessions, win, their battles one-on-one. I think this is going to be a pretty rough scene for Oklahoma, TBH.
Tennessee has the top overall most efficient offense per College Football Insiders and CFBgraphs.com. They also have the second best total defense on the season so far.
Wow.
Their front seven specifically has been really fun to watch. 20 tackles for loss through 3 games, only 4 sacks, but a lot of quarterback pressures, a lot of havoc created on those downs as well. So I've got my eyes on the trenches. We're both on Tennessee minus the 7.5.
Gracious, how about that?